pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Approval of minutes, November 10th, 2025, open session. Is there a motion? All in favor? Any opposed? None. The motion passes. November 10th, 2025, closed session. Is there a motion? All in favor? All right. Motion passes. Okay. Baseball. Thank you for coming on such a crappy night, but it shows your dedication to the sport. I remember a few years ago when my boys were playing baseball, the gold standard for baseball in the county was Paramus because they went to the Little League World Series and the whole thing. But I always said that Woodcliff Lake had the premier baseball organization because we won championships every year, and we continue to win championships every year, and we don't see them from Paramus anymore. So for a small community, you deserve a lot of credit. Congratulations. So at this moment, I'd like to turn it over to our council president, Josh Stern, for some presentations.
Sure. And I guess one of the things we like to do at the beginning of our meetings is to honor some great achievements. And I think we have a lot of great achievements tonight. 5 of the travel teams won their championships, the 9U, 10U, 11U, 12U, and 13U teams. The 8U team lost a nail-biter in extra innings. Came in second. It was probably one of the most competitive and fun games I've watched in a long time. Our kids worked tremendously hard this season. It really showed. But it also takes a huge team in order to have this type of success that we see there. We have a tremendous baseball board that works really hard. If we look at our uniforms, one of the things that our kids and the parents really have a source of pride in is we always look the best. We play very well, but we also have some great uniforms that a lot of other teams don't have. We have coaches that spend countless hours with these kids. Sometimes I don't know why, because the kids can be difficult, but we really have a great coaches. We have moms who are out there, rain or shine and cold and in darkness. We also have a really good DPW staff that helps get our fields in order. The last couple of years, we've put special emphasis in improving our fields. This last year, we installed new scoreboards in all the fields. This upcoming year, it's our intent to turf the infield of Major. And if you look at Resolution 25-280, which is on for tonight, we are authorizing money for Negley Engineering, who's our town engineer, to begin that process so that we can hopefully turf the infield of Major beginning after next fall season. We have first-rate children and first-rate kids, and we really deserve first-rate facilities. And hopefully over the next couple of years, we can really reach that goal of having some great facilities for those kids. So I'm going to have the mayor read the proclamation first, and then we're going to announce all the teams and all the players and coaches.
Okay. Whereas the spirit of teamwork, perseverance, sportsmanship lies in the heart of our community, most cherished traditions, and whereas the athletes, coaches, and staff of our championship baseball team have demonstrated dedication, resilience, discipline throughout the season, and whereas during the fall of 2025 season, all Woodcliff Lakes travel teams won trophies for placing first or second in their respective leagues, and whereas the Woodcliff Lake 9U, 10U, 11U, 12U, and 13U teams each won their respective league championships, and whereas the Woodcliff Lake 8U travel team finished second place after losing in extra innings, and whereas you will have memories that will last a lifetime. Inspired by your coaches, you believed in yourselves and you showed what it really means to be a winner.
whereas the season like this does not happen without dozens of coaches, parents, volunteers, all of whom should be commended. A special thanks and gratitude to all the Baseball Association board members, Joe Block, TJ Churchill, Brian Friedman, Michael McKinley, Chris LaForgia, Anthony Bales, Gus Guida, Mike Florentino, Kevin Pertenuto, and Chris Polandro. And whereas it is fitting that we publicly recognize and celebrate their successes as well as supportive families, fans, community members that have contributed to this achievement. Now therefore be it resolved that the mayor and council of the borough of Wickliffe Lake honor you for your achievements and wish you continued success in the future. Signed, Mayor Carlos Rendo, Council President Josh Stern, Councilwoman Julie Brodsky, Councilwoman Nicole Marsh, Councilman Christopher Bonanno, Councilwoman Jennifer Margolis, and Councilman Benjamin Pollack. Congratulations, boys.
So let me read. I'm going to have each team come up. They're going to stand over there. Let me read the rosters so each kid gets recognized, and then we'll give out the proclamations and we'll do a group photo. No, we'll do it once we do. Let me call everybody up first. Okay, so why don't we have the 8U team come up and stand over there?
8U.
Yeah, just and let me. So the 8U.
Get in there?
No.
Sure.
Okay, so the 8U team is coached by Gus Guida, Andrew Ganji, Chris LaForgia, and special shout out to Paul Porco, who does Game Changer. The players on the team are Henry Barrett, Leo Benjamin, Luke Basales, Luke Friedlich, DJ Ganji, Logan Gold, Gus Guida, Manny LaForgia, Dylan McEllen, Owen Porco, Hudson Smith, and last but certainly not least, Grant Stern. Okay, so why don't we get the 9U team up? And the 9U team is coached by Mike McKinley, Andrew Guberman, Michael Kaufman, James Slays, and Doug Siegel. And the players are Max Ballinger, Des DeSocio, Vera Dewan, Ben Dworkin, Bradley Guberman, Jake Hahn, Nick Kaufman, Nate Lurcher, Connell Lofgren, Grayson McKinley, Noah Phillips, Zach Siegel, and John Slays. Why don't we get the 10U team up?
10U.
And the 10U team is coached by TJ Churchill, David Flans, Paul Porco, and Stephen Commandore. And the players are Ben Bakash, Jacob Bender, Jackson Churchill, Jason Commandore, Caden Faridi, Andrew Flans, James Hill, Preston Lee, Aiden McEllen, TJ Porco, Jared Sandler, and Gavin Siegerman. Let's get the 11U team up. All right, the 11U team is coached by Chris LaForgia, Joe Block, Brian Friedman, and Jared Zimmel. And the team is Andrew Bergman, Sean Bergman, Brandon Block, Matthias Carballo, Hudson Duggan, Samuel Friedman, Anthony LaForgia, Cody Levine, Ryan Sandler, and Tyler Zimmel. So let's get the 12U team up. And the 12U team is coached by Christopher Poliandrew, Anthony Basales, David Flans, and Matt Maizano. And the players are Christian Ascona, Matthew Bender, Anthony Basales, Liam Burbage, Zach Flans, Matthew Maizano, Kieran McEllen, Edward Milano, Jonathan Muller, Christopher Poliandrew, Brody Portundo, Nolan Sewell, and Hudson Wall. And last, let's get the 13U team up. And the 13U team is coached by Michael Fiorentino and Jason Teitelbaum. And the players are Sebastian Carballo, Anthony Fiorentino, Jake Foster, Austin Gade, Jaden Hahn, Joseph Oliveri, Austin Teitelbaum, Chase Teitelbaum, Samuel Tuckin, Christopher Churchill, and Matthew Ippolito. That's it.
The coaches? All right, we'll take a break.
You want to say something?
I did already. All right, so we're going to take a 5-minute break. Boys, you don't have to stay for the boring meeting. So, thank you so much.
Go Warriors.
second part of our agenda, which is the presentation on ordinance number 2512, is known as the pilot program. First, personally, I'd like to thank our experts that are sitting to our left, to your right, for their hard work and dedication to the borough of Wickliffe Lake and looking after our interest. That is important because when you have complicated issues like this, that's who you depend on. And our experts are auditor, our own personal auditor, so he has obviously a vested interest to make sure Wickliffe Lake has the best possible deal for our residents. Also, our planner, Fran, and our attorney, Wendy, for many hours put this together. But I'd like to particularly thank Council President Josh Stern and Councilwoman Nikki Marsh. When we put this committee together, I wanted 2 attorneys on the committee because I said, these are moving parts and these are very complicated negotiations and a very complicated set of facts that we have to work through and, look at every detail to make sure that our borough is protected. So at this moment, I'd like to turn this over to Council President Josh Stern, who sat through every single one of those meetings, even with his busy schedule as an attorney. But he put in a lot of time and effort for the borough of Wickliffe Lake. And same thing with Nicole Marsh.
All right, thank you, Mayor. To those that don't know me, I have a first grader, I have a second grader, both at Dorchester. Many of the council people sitting on this dais have young children who attend both Dorchester and the middle school. For all of us sitting up here, these are deeply personal issues. We definitely share many of the concerns of the residents here. But our number one job as council people, my number one job is to protect the borough, even on issues that may be unpopular. I want to address a few things, and then we'll turn it over to our borough professionals. I want to address some of the misconceptions. I know there's been a lot of chatter on social media, some of it inaccurate, so I want to address some of those misconceptions. First, a pilot, just by its term, stands for a payment in lieu of taxes. It is not a tax abatement. It's an alternative way for the borough to receive revenue. It would be paid quarterly in the same way that taxes are paid. It is not, like I said, it is not a tax abatement. Our local school districts, a pilot has no effect on the funding of our local school districts. Whatever budget each of our schools set, those schools will get that money. So pilot has no effect on the amount of money that each of the districts will receive. Second, while the law mandates that the municipality is to receive those pilot payments, it doesn't prohibit the borough from sharing money with our school districts. And in fact, it is our intent to share some of the pilot money with our local school district. To that extent, we've already had initial meetings with our school district about those sharing of some of that money. Those will continue. Once we approve this, those will continue, and we will reach an agreement with our local district about sharing some of the pilot money that's coming in to the municipality. I want to get into some of the benefits of a pilot. I know like I said, there's been a lot of misconceptions on social media, but I do want to get into some of the benefits. Now, the first real benefit of a pilot is a pilot gives the borough certain control over what gets built at the BMW site. In essence, based on the way the state law is structured, the developers have a lot of leverage on the towns. We've seen that all over. We've seen that in Park Ridge. We've seen that in municipalities all through the state. The way that Trenton has structured the law, boroughs don't have a lot of say on what gets built, except we do have leverage on a pilot. Now, what the pilot has helped us do is we were initially looking at a developer who wanted to build 600 to 700 units on that site. So we leveraged a pilot in order to reduce those number of units down to a more manageable 370. But we not only got the number down to 370, we took a lot of steps that really lessened the adverse effects that a pilot, that development would have on the community. One, we've reduced a lot of the bedroom count. So if you look at the apartments in particular, I believe 90 plus are 1 and 2 bedrooms, whereas if we had no control, we'd end up with a lot of 3 bedrooms. Of the 47 townhouses that are being built, 17 of those will have elevators. Those elevators make those units more desirable for retirees. Certainly people with children are not going to want to buy a townhouse with an elevator. We've also been able to use the pilot in order to put in place a 40-bed supportive housing unit. Those 40 beds are in lieu of 40 affordable housing units. Some of those 40 affordable units would have been 3 bedrooms. If you know anything about affordable housing, it's really the affordable units that really drive the school-age children. So by using that pilot, we were able to smartly put in place a 40-bed supportive housing in lieu of 40 separate units. Another benefit, which we'll talk about, is that in connection with the pilot, BMW settled all of its current tax appeals with the borough. I know we've had tax appeals with BMW probably dating back from 2012, maybe even before. The borough has spent millions and millions of dollars with tax appeals with BMW. As of last year, we had exposure for up to about $7 million in tax appeals. All of those appeals have been settled. Third, one of the things, if you know anything about what's being built in Park Ridge, is Park Ridge is now being sued by the developer for approximately $30 million relating to bringing of utilities to one of their affordable housing sites. In connection with the pilot, we were able to negotiate that the builder is responsible for the bringing of all utilities to that site. So if there's an issue with electricity, if there's an issue with water, that's all on the builder. The borough is not going to face a lawsuit the way that Park Ridge is facing a lawsuit. Fourth, the borough is getting several different community benefit payments. The first one we'll talk about is that the developer has agreed to fund approximately $2 million for the renovation of Lydecker, both the structure and the grounds. It's a decent amount of money to do it. We're going to hopefully start on that right away. But that also allows us to build something like a playground on the outside of those grounds, which I know our community desperately lacks. We also will have a community payment where the developer will pay approximately $900,000 every year until the pilot comes online. That should have a great effect on offsetting some of the tax increases that may happen when that building is demolished. As far as the actual payments themselves, and I know our professionals are going to get into it, right now the borough receives, for purposes of, so the borough and the local district receive about $900,000 a year for that property. That property is assessed at $69 million. Although when we talk about a $69 million assessment, in reality, that assessment is probably a little higher than it should be, and is one of the reasons why we've been paying tax appeals on it. After the pilot, we're going to be receiving about double that amount of money, so that the local district and the municipality will receive beginning probably about $1.8 million, and then it's going to gradually increase from there. So we're dealing with a significant amount of money. I'm going to turn it over to our auditors, who are going to go specifically through the payments and through the program.
Thank you. I'd like to start off by just introducing ourselves. My name is Paul Lurch. I'm a partner with the firm of Lurch, Vinci, and Bliss. Sitting to the right of me is Julius Consoni. He's also a partner with the firm. Julius Consoni has been very involved. Good. Yep. Julius has been involved from day one. Okay. So as I said, Julius has been involved from day one through all of the calculations and all of the negotiations that have gone on. Our firm was responsible for not coming up with policy, whether or not to do the pilot. Our firm had the responsibility of determining and negotiating the best possible deal for the borough. And I know that after going through this process for several months, negotiation after negotiation, revision after revision, that I know I certainly feel very comfortable that the borough is in the best possible position it could be through this process. And as I indicated, it was hundreds of hours. It took several months to go through this process. And I do feel that at the end of the day, what's being presented is really one of the best possible deals that the borough could achieve. We have a small PowerPoint here, and the object here is that we're keeping this very basic at this point. We'll go through just some of the basics to inform the public. And then what we'll do is we'll open it up to any kind of comments or questions that we have. Julius obviously is here as myself and myself to answer, and Wendy as well. Her team was intimate in the analysis as well. So what I want to do is just kind of go flip through this quickly here. I'm not going to belabor a lot of this, but and I think a lot of this is probably public knowledge already since this has been through the process a little bit here. You know, what are we talking about? We're talking about 300 Chestnut Ridge Road, right? The former piece of the BMW property. And ultimately, the financial agreement or the pilot is looking at an apartment phase, and the apartment phase is 263 market rate with 34 affordable units. There is a townhome phase of 47 market rate units, some supportive housing as well. And then there is going to be a small piece of the retail and restaurant component. So the pilot, as the councilman indicated, the pilot is a payment in lieu of taxes. And it really is an amount that the property owner will pay instead of paying the conventional real estate taxes. As part of that apartment phase, the pilot can go from a term of 10 years to 30 years. The pilot that's being proposed for the apartment phase is the 30-year by statute. As part of this pilot agreement, the land portion is exempt from taxation, is not exempt from taxation, I'm sorry. The townhome phase is exempt from taxation, and that pilot is only going to be a 20-year phase. So after the 20 years and after the 30 years, those properties go back to the full market value. There'll be a piece of it, which is the supportive housing phase, which is tax exempt on the land and improvements, and the retail restaurant phase as well, which will be 30 years. The pilot terms, as we indicated, for the apartment component is based on annual gross revenues. What is the percentage that on the return that the municipality will receive on annual gross payments over the various years? We've seen pilots that have been much less on the percentage return that the borough would be receiving. So here you can see that through years 1 and 10, it's 10%. It escalates all the way towards the end, where that the borough would be receiving 15% on years 28 through 30 of the gross revenues received by the apartment complex. The other component is a townhome component that's over a 20-year pilot, and that's based on the percentage of taxes on the improvements, which is a little bit different. The apartments are based on the revenue. The townhomes are based on percentage of taxes otherwise due, which is really based on the conventional tax assessed value and the current rate of taxation. So they are calculated differently. And I guess I should have said this up front, but generally speaking on the pilots, and I think we'll talk about it a little bit further, that the county government will receive 5% of those pilots. That is by statute. The remaining portion will stay with the municipality. And this is just a little bit of a background information here, kind of looking at what the existing value is. So that property right now that we're talking about for development has a current assessed value of $69 million. And I think, as the councilman indicated, when you look at market value, it's probably less than that. But I think for our purposes, that's the amount that's on the book. So we're going to continue with that for our analysis purposes. So the project or the site currently generates about $1.5 million in total taxes a year. So in other words, if we did nothing going forward and no development was proposed on that property and it stayed without an appeal, without a redevelopment, it would generate roughly that $1.5 million a year, which is what it's doing right now. And you can see the allocation and basically it's typically 25% municipality and the rest goes either to the school or to the county. Then you get into the projected pilot taxes after improvements. And here's really where, after our calculations and negotiations with the developer, here's really what the dollars and cents are going to look like. So you can see we have it broken down into two components because the apartment phase is done differently than the townhouse phase. So on the apartment phase, the pilot we're going to receive total over 30 years is going to be $69 million in total. 65 coming to us, 3 million and change going to the county. As I indicated before, the land side of it, the land value will continue to pay taxes as it currently does today. So when you look over the 30-year component, 69 million is on the pilot, plus we're going to still continue to collect, or at least in total, that property is going to wind up paying an additional roughly $5 million. So that's the apartment side of it. The townhouse side of it, which is based on a different calculation, which is only a 20-year pilot, that pilot's going to produce the $16 million. And then you have the conventional taxes going after on years 21 through 30, because after the 20-year period, then that property goes back to the regular market, goes back to the regular assessed values, and we just tax it like any other home or property in the borough. So years 1 through 21, it's 16 million and change. After that, it goes back to conventional from 21 to 30 of an additional 15 million. So as you can see on the townhouse side of it, the land values are exempt. So it's not part of that calculation on the pilot years 1 through 20. And then that gets you to the grand total. So you really need to look at all of these components and say, okay, over a 30-year period, if I was trying to figure out what are the dollars that are going to be collected over that period, you can see that when we add up the pilot for the apartment plus the land taxes that you normally would have paid, that they're going to pay anyway, then we add the townhome years 1 through 20, and then we add years 21 through 30. It comes to a grand total of $106 million. That's over the 30-year period. So that's what we're projecting the pilot to produce, in addition to the other money that we'll talk about in a minute that was part of that calculation. And then you have existing taxes versus the proposed pilot. So as you can see in the middle column, that is the 106 million that we just went through the analysis. How are we getting that 106 million? We have the various components. And then we look at the existing taxes. So the existing taxes, just for comparison purposes, is as that piece of property the way it is. It's at that $69 million assessed value. What does it currently produce in taxes? What does it produce over that 30-year period? It's going to produce roughly $64 million. So that property at $64 million today, compared to what the pilot project is going to produce over that same period, is going to be $106 million. And that's the differential. So it's roughly $42 million difference. The big difference is obviously when you look at that analysis is that really the bulk of that money now comes to the municipality. The county is still going to wind up getting roughly almost the same 5%, and then the school and regional, it's just a shift at that point from those components.
And if I could just add one thing to that as well, at the end of the 30-year period, it reverts back to conventional taxes. And as you can see on the slide, the improved value after this project is done is going to be 143 million. That's almost double what the assessed value is today. So that will revert back to regular taxation at the end.
And just a little bit of a recap about the other financial benefits, right? We talked about this, or at least the council member did. The $2 million that's being donated, contributed towards the Lydecker House. There's also other community benefit payments that are being valued in here as well for the next roughly 5 years, approximately almost $1 million a year, $900,000 a year over that period of time. So when you take the 106 plus these other components, that's the total package of the pilot agreement. I think at this point, at this time, if anybody has any specific questions, we can get into some of the details if you need be, or just answer any other questions. you might have.
Paul, prior to that, I think the mayor wanted, if Ms. Quiroga, if you had anything to add on the legal side on this, and then if not, then we'll take a motion to open to the public for comments.
Julius did a wonderful job of giving the overview of it. No? We'll wait for questions and see if there's something that we can clarify for the
And
public.
once we open it to the public, as we did in the previous meeting, all comments or questions, Ms. Quiroga is going to jot them down, and she or the team there, the financial team, will answer that at the end rather than back and forth, because some people may have the same question. So
Okay.
I think we need a motion to
Motion.
public hearing
Yeah.
for ordinance 2512.
Motion to open to the public? Sirs, all in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion passes. Okay, whoever would like to speak, come on up, state your name, the town you're from, and 3 minutes, and we'll take down your questions, and then we'll have our experts or us answer them when we're done. Come on up. Not everybody at once.
Jill Strasberg, do you want to know my address?
No, just Woodcliff Lake.
Okay. Pilot tax payments are required to be allocated, or 100% to towns, and for 30 years in this case, or I guess 20 years in part of it, with none required to go to school costs. This new development and other developments converting offices or hotel properties to residential in the future in Woodcliff Lake could bring in significant increases, potentially 20% of residents and units into our K-8 schools and regional high school. If any of the students have special education needs or teachers or space need to be added, costs will go up, perhaps significantly. Residents and other businesses could see an increase in our already high property taxes. I'm asking, how will the mayor and council allocate taxes to schools as part of future revenue agreement? And another follow-up question, after looking at the PowerPoint, I'm seeing on the BMW property that while the taxes are going up to the town in total, the school taxes are going down 28 million in total. So, and just, are my 3 minutes up? Okay, and then in addition, I'm wondering why the pilot taxes are needed, as Woodcliff Lake is not a blighted town in need of redevelopment. That's it. Should I sit?
Yep, thank you. Come on up.
Wendy, you got all that.
Josephine Higgins, Woodcliff Lake. I want to say, Paul, you always give good presentations. We were lucky to get Paul when I became mayor. And the only thing I have to ask is, why hasn't this been given to us sooner than tonight? I mean, really, this is a lot to devour in one night. The other thing is the master plan. I worked very, very hard on the master plan, and we met down at the town hall, and we had small groups, and then we had another meeting with larger groups. And I got my paperwork out from there. Some of it I have left, some of them I don't. there was nobody who wanted something this large in their community. They wanted to keep Wickliffe Lake, the place they moved into, where they can afford to stay. A lot of the seniors, they're not here tonight because of the rain, stuff like that. And I talked to several of them today. They called me, are quite concerned, that they are not going to be able to stay here over the years as the taxation falls back on the residents, during this period. So I was wondering if you could answer that, later on. Is there going to be any benefit for the seniors in this? Okay.
Thank you.
Write that. You'll answer it later? Yeah, okay, thank you.
Hello, everybody. I'm Alvin Starr, a long-term resident of Wickliffe Lake. For 40-plus years, I've lived at 209 Glen Road. My comments really deal with issues of the site itself. The site is major limitations. And let me outline at least three issues right here. I'm calling attention, I know the developer isn't here, but I'll call attention to the current site drawing A01 and the proposed site drawing A02. Topography is not shown on either of these drawings. These drawings do not represent the site. We note that the current BMW building is way far from the north end of site for good reason, because the north end really isn't buildable. So you had an apple orchard there. I would say, has the mayor and council visited the site from the perspective of, say, the Bristol driveway? You get a very nice view of the limitations of this site. You will notice significant slopes along Glen Road and the Garden State Parkway on-ramp. To build on the northern side of the site, and the drawing shows the building right to the edge of the site, is going to require a major geocivil structural construction that has to be done, bringing many truckloads of constructible soils, compacting, development and construction of retaining walls, and major retaining wall construction. You need many truckloads of constructed soils, building of massive retaining walls. And another issue is when you build the retaining walls and you have a point of ingress and egress on Glen Road, these cars entering and exiting will be going through a trench. And as you exit it, there'll be very limited line of sight. And we're going to have a situation like exit 168 in the Parkway when you get off and you try to make a left turn, where you can't see. So it hasn't been addressed. The site has many issues. And exiting there could be a death trap, just like we see at 168 on the Parkway getting off. And I think everybody knows what exit 168 is like. We don't need to create another 168 problem. I recommend to the mayor and council that the site plan show the current topography and the final topography. And I recommend that in addition to the aerial view, which is looking down, you have, at least from the perspective of Glen Road, you have frontal views and side views on different angles to represent what the retaining wall will look like, what the point of ingress and egress will look like, and you can judge from the drawings or the images the risks that will be there, and if it can be ameliorated, let it be corrected. But this is a danger spot. And the same thing along the Garden State Parkway ramp, but this should be an issue for the chief engineer of the Turnpike Authority. He should be brought into this thing. When you compact it, you're replacing a lot of permeable soils with non-permeable surfaces. There'll be a lot of runoff, a lot of water runoff. When you have a heavy rain, how are you going to manage the runoff? The runoff goes into the Bear Brook watershed, which is right downhill. And we all know what happens in heavy rains on Bear Brook. All you have to do is look at that new bridge at the foot of Glen Road, and you see all the scour damage from heavy rains. You get a really big rainstorm, when you get something built over there, you're going to have a problem right down to the bottom of Glen Road. This is a major project, and really, it needs a lot of geocivil correction to make it work and to not create other problems. We're trying to avoid these problems, and it hasn't been addressed. I'll say one other thing. Traffic on Glen Road. I live on the town section of Glen Road between the Bear Brook Bridge and the bottom of the hill. I'm at the top of the hill. And the traffic has been increasing year by year. And what's particularly annoying and dangerous is the police cars come running up 40 miles an hour, lights and sirens a couple times a day. And when you make that turn at the top of the hill, right before the Bear Brook Bridge, you can kill somebody. People walk there. My wife and I walk there. People walk the dogs on the road. It's a narrow road. And some portions you can't even go. Barely 2 cars can go in opposition. What I'll say, this is a very, very dangerous situation. And I don't know how the applicant's going to deal with this thing. I don't know if they can. It's a mayor and council issue. You're going to have the Hilton property is going to be housing what's going to be happening at the Party City site, more housing. You're going to have more housing here. You have cumulative impacts, and you're creating a very, very dangerous situation. Should the police go up Woodcliff Avenue by the school, or they should go on Glen Road, or should they go on Fremont Avenue? Not a good choice here, but you're creating a very, very dangerous situation for people who live in town, and it's not been addressed. So I think this needs to be looked at, and this is basically a problem project. The site hasn't been built on to this extent because it really isn't buildable within reason. And thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hey there, Alexander King, Woodcliff Lake. Thank you for advisory for preparing all the numbers. I have a couple questions about that. The first one, I saw it in another presentation, but it looks like we don't know yet exactly at what point head count saturation occurs at the schools. I know this is like a model based. So at what point, I think it was 780 is what 2023-24 enrollment was. So depending on elementary, middle school, and then Pascack Valley High, at what point do we reach saturation of the current budget and when that would roll over? Because that's really the number that most people are going to care about, because we have to absorb that as residents. Unless, like you said, there's a chip in from the pilot money that goes in. So the second thing is, do you have a date or an idea of what the chip in would be of the sharing? Because that's a meaningful figure. I think most people are looking at that. So at what point is that reached, or an idea reached, and at what point is that percent? Probably a percentage, it's my guess. So I think a lot of people are wondering about that. Another thing, are the advisors and auditors on board? Like, how long are they on board for through the project? The reason I want to know is because I don't know if you know of the BKF O'Connor Davies white paper on pilots, but the majority of towns, municipalities like this, don't have proper controls in place to address things like if they spin off an entity to absorb the rent and we don't have the ability to access the right numbers. What they saw is that most towns like us are smallish. Developer is big. So they have a lot of very clever accounting tricks that make it easy to extract more money out of the project when something like that would be coming towards us. What protections are in place that you built into the agreement to do that, if any, and if they're not, are they coming? That's meaningful. And I don't remember what the fifth one was, but I'll think about it. Well, this is an important numbers one, so we want to know.
Thank you.
Roger Gross, Woodcliff Lake. I just want to acknowledge the process that's going on here is terrific. I think the introduction to the project is great. I recognize tonight we're talking about the pilot, not so much about the lack of engineering. I'd like to thank the gentleman for his thoughtful concerns that he's raised. I think that all of this has been about how good this is for everybody, and I'm not suggesting it's not so good for everybody, but I would suggest that the concerns that are being raised by the public are concerns that ought to have maybe been part of the conversation from the get-go. I have a couple of concerns. Councilman President Stern, I think you mentioned a couple times that the revenue from the existing site is 900,000. In the illustration, it says $1.5 million.
I mean, I think what I said was that the revenue to the local district and to the municipality is about 900,000. I think it's 920,000 to the municipality and the local district. Is what I
So
said.
where does the balance of the $1.5 million go?
Regional school and county. So I think what the councilman was referring to is that he was saying, hey, municipality.
Got it.
Local school is 900.
Okay, I understand.
400 is the regional.
Okay. The primary thing I wanted to try to express was based on the projection is over 30 years. The first 20 or 23 years, I believe it's a 10% of the gross aggregate on most of the revenue that's generated. And then it's not until year 24 that it starts to climb to 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15%.
It's actually in year 11.
Year 11, it goes to 11%.
Correct. And then
only
18,
in year 23, it goes to 12.
No, year 18, it goes to 12.
18, 12?
Yeah.
Okay, but there's different parts of it that accelerate at different rates, or is that aggregate calculation all of the revenue, the apartment phase and the townhome phase? It is. So,
Well, no. So the percentage is only the apartment phase. The townhome phase has a different percentage, right? That's based on the total assessed value. So if
Right.
you look at the slides, it's actually page 4 is the townhomes and the page 3 is the apartment and retail phase.
okay, so I guess the primary concern was that it looks to me like of the 106 million, the difference, the majority of the income to us, I feel like is weighted at the back end of the 30 years. And I would really like to see a projection of the entire annual 30-year process, because I'm sure it's in a spreadsheet somewhere, and to see that the majority of the difference in the revenue that we get now versus the projections from the pilot seem to fall in the last third. How much of those additional revenues are in the first 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20, some sort of better detail of the phasing of the growth of the revenue from the project? Does that exist?
Well, yeah, of course it exists, but as far as the calculation and the presentation, this is an overview.
Okay.
And of course, we have the detail as to how the revenue breaks on every single year. We've got it by year, right?
That's what I figured. So that's what I was
detail.
looking to see.
Yeah.
And then I guess the ultimate
I'm just
question
going to
is.
interrupt for one
is there-
second, just to remind that we weren't going to do question and
Right,
answer.
I'm sorry. The last question
So
I
I will
have.
write down what you're saying, but I would ask that everybody just let the gentleman speak
Yeah.
so we can move to.
I'm
everybody.
sorry about that. The last question, and now I'm going to forget it.
You made us forget the other way.
All right. So I guess it's the projection. The last question I'm going to have to think about.
Well, you'll have another opportunity.
I was on a roll. I'll get back on.
Yeah. You still have a couple seconds left. All right, anyone else? Come on up.
Good evening on this snowy night. Bert Taylor, Woodcliff Lake, and I am very grateful to Council President Stern for updating us as to what the situation is with the offers by the firm, okay? I just kind of feel like with the wet out there, like we're all mushrooms. I've been looking at this thing for months, what's happening out there. I've gotten a copy of the ordinance 25-12 that spells out a lot of the terms and conditions that are out there over 10 years and 20 years, and the retail space. I don't know why the retail space is getting a break, but they certainly are. They're not paying anything until they get some revenue in, even though they got the property. I had requested from the town clerk a copy from Oprah of what the latest agreement is as of Monday. I wasn't aware of what things you're talking about tonight. So somewhere between Monday and Wednesday, we've added all of these terms in. I don't know how that happens. I will give you a challenge. Can anybody up there tell me what the revenue will be in year 20 and what it will be for the schools? Come on. You're just giving us information at the very last 11th hour at the 59th minute and expecting us to say, oh, that looks good. How can we possibly make a judgment on that? You haven't told us in months that there hasn't been notice to the public that there was even going on. Nobody knows that this is going on. It was a big secret. Aside from certain people on the council, Congress, I'm making you even better. Council President Stern, we sat down together and you sat with me, and I appreciate that very much. We were open and honest, and that's the way it has to be. But the rest of this has been a mushroom. We don't know what's going on. We don't know what the terms and conditions are. We don't know what's being put into this. Why has you got the accountant over here making all of these judgments, but it's not given out to the public so that they can take a look and find out what's happening? I got the copy of the agreement that's ready to be signed on Monday, and I didn't know about this stipulations that I'm hearing from Mr. Stern. That's unacceptable.
What stipulations are we talking about?
$2 million going over to the Lydecker house. I didn't know about it. It's not in there.
We're not going to go back and forth.
I understand that, but what else are you going to add to this that we don't know about? What are you going to take away from us that we don't know about? When is the public ever going to know what you're doing? And how can you make a judgment in basing this on the 11th hour in figures that are just being presented to us now, and the public has no idea about them, and they say, oh, well, that sounds good. I say bull thinking. Let us make a judgment, and don't make the judgment tonight. Do not pass it tonight until we know and we can approve what you're doing to us. You got up there $26 million that's not going to our schools. Tell it to the kids who just came out of here. Are they going to be happy? I hope not, because I'm not.
Yes, just one more thing.
No, come on.
I'm new to the area, less than a year. Yes, my name is Alicia Wallace, and I live in Woodcliff. Alicia Wallace, and I live in Woodcliff Lake. I'm a local realtor, so I was asked to speak on behalf of Property Values. Let me go ahead and put on my glasses. Nice to see everybody. I love the way the meeting is run. Okay, so that's the concern, and I know these questions are going to be answered at the end. A few people have mentioned the 26+ million shortfall to the schools. So that's definitely the concern, because school performance is one of the strongest predictors of property value in an area, especially in Woodcliff Lake and these smaller townships of Bergen County that are not right next to the GWB. You know, the moment there isn't funding for kids with an IEP, each kid that requires these individual programs to be drawn up for them costs about $100,000. And we're seeing it more often, unfortunately, than not, that students need these programs. So the minute rumor gets out that these programs, they're mandated by federal law, so it's not something you can wait until later to do. It's called the IDEA Act, mandated by federal law. You know, once that stuff starts happening, it gets online. You know, goodschools.com, people start making comments, and that is just one of the strongest predictors Buyers perceive the district as less desirable, which leads to fewer buyers entering the market for this area, longer days on market for houses that are on the market for sale. And, it's declining long-term appreciation. It shows that even modest drops in school rankings can reduce demand from families who are the major driving force behind suburban property values. Strong schools protect home equity, and weakening school performance does put that at risk. So I look forward to hearing about the revenue sharing program between the schools and the township. Thank you.
Alexander King again, Woodcliff Lake. I thought of a couple. Can you talk about, I know the state's been tightening the wrenches on us for affordable housing. Can you talk about how that was part of the equation? Was that part of the negotiation to fulfill our obligations? That's been a pretty big one also that I know a lot of people have talked about, and I'm sure was part of this. Thanks.
Jill Strasberg. The pilot agreement is defined as based on annual gross revenue, but nowhere is annual gross revenue defined. Can you tell us what that means?
Hi, Laura Jeffers, Woodcliff Lake. I just have some simple questions, things that I don't necessarily understand, what I've been reading lately. But first of all, I want to ask, I see the financial benefits of the project, and it brings up these numbers for 26 through 30, and they're short of the $1.5 million that's being paid on that property now. Where are we going to make that number up? That's my first question. And hey, the way that this was presented, it sounds like my taxes will be going down, not up, with all that money coming in. But maybe I'm wrong. Another thing that I want to ask about is if you could explain the townhouses and how they're going to be paying their taxes, because it keeps talking about, it talks about the developer is going to be taking care of that, but I don't think that's the way that it is. I would assume it's from the residents of those buildings. And the benefit to the builder would be that they can sell it as a discounted rate when they market the properties. What else? Oh, I think it was asked earlier about the audit. That information is going to be monitored yearly through these folks. So we're going to be paying for that to be done, and then it's going to be compared to what the developer gives us. How do we do the checks and balances on that? Okay. All right. And then some of these numbers seem to be based on 100% occupancy. So first of all, are this number of 2030, the project going to be complete? The builder has guaranteed that? Is that correct? So everything will be at 100% in 2030? And if it's not, what is happening? How are we getting any kind of revenue at that point? If that doesn't happen. What else did I want to ask? Oh, and if you could go again over how the schools are going to be funded, that would be terrific, because I know you said that they're going to be giving money, or the money from the town is going to go, some of it to the school. But is it going to cover each and every child that's going to go into the school, or is it just going to be a predetermined number by the town? So like if we have, 50 kids, are we going to be, putting out the $23,000 and the $32,000 a year that we need for each of those kids? So that we have those total numbers, or, how are you determining what's going to go to the school? I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
reminder financially, whatever you do tonight, we haven't had a chance to take a look at it, and you have auditors who have, so we might have questions about what those numbers are. We haven't heard any answers to what those questions are, but we have questions. Whatever you do tonight, you're setting a precedent. We are at the tip of an iceberg. It may be a lot of units that we're talking about with BMW, but it's an iceberg out there that you're talking about. We're the Titanic. Take a look at what's happening with Broadway. You got 4 units over there. They've got the same situation, so they're going to want to have the same pilots. They're going to want to have the same concessions that you're giving tonight, but they're not here to talk about that. But they're going to want the same concessions from you. And when we go over, and let's take the Hilton. The Hilton is now owned by a billionaire, owns a football team, so he's got some money, but he's going to want money back from that. He's going to want money, and he's going to want concessions. He's going to want profit. He's going to want everything that you're giving out tonight for him, and he's got almost the same amount of property over there. So you're setting a precedent. To say nothing of the property that's over at, and I forget the name of it, but it's the property that's over at the corner of Pascack and Old Pascack Road, up on the hill there. Okay. Want to have the same thing over there. If you put this all together, what you're proving tonight, or if you do, and I hope you don't, I hope you put it off until we have a chance to find out more about what's really happening. Because if I can't find out what's happening in 2 days, then you have to let these people know what's happening, is going to be triple what we see tonight in terms of units, in terms of people, in terms of what's going to be happening with our schools. I did some calculations, and I used the Rutgers School of Education as to what should be used for schools. Whatever our school principal said, I went by the Rutgers School of Education from 2025. I think that's a pretty good source. And there'll be kids coming in. And even if they don't make any concessions in terms of what they need for classrooms, they're going to need luncheons, they're going to need school books, they're going to need after-school activities. There's going to be cost for those kids. And this is only 1/3 of what's going to be coming up in this town within the next 3 to 5 years, because we're looking at the tip of an iceberg. Don't be an Atlantic. Don't be, excuse me, a Titanic. Don't go down with the ship, because everybody's going to want the same concessions out of you. If you give them tonight, you got at least 6 others who say, oh, I'd like that too also. So just think about it some more before you go ahead and commit all of this millions, hundreds of millions of dollars into the town that we don't know what the long-term aspect will be until you look at the big picture. The big picture is staring at you. Don't just look at this. It's a bigger picture than what you got tonight.
If I may, I just want to interrupt to say that I am writing down all the questions. So if somebody's already said it, you don't have to worry about saying it again because I've already written it down.
Good evening, everyone. Richard Jagarjan with Cliff Lake. Heard all the comments tonight. A lot of good comments as well. I've been a resident for 28 years. I've been to many of these meetings. And one thing I've come to conclusion is that it's great that we all share all our comments with you all, hoping that it falls on, that you listen to us, it doesn't fall on deaf ears. But at the end of the day, we know what happens. We all know what happens. You're going to do what you're going to do. Just know that, the developers are doing what they want to do. They're going to take advantage of the New Jersey laws, and they're going to push those laws on us. They know that we're a small town. We don't have the resources to fight against these. And we end up making concessions, and then, what happens, happens. I don't like I remember when we did these townhouses next to where we live, I mentioned during that process, I said, once you put townhouses in Woodcliff Lake, there's a single home county, I'm not county, town. And once you do that, it's going to open up to more townhouses. So now we've gone to not just townhouses, to apartments in supportive housing. So I don't know how we've gone down this rabbit hole. And it's really, it's sad. But at the same time, as a resident, if I don't like it, I guess I move. And and someone else is going to move into our house. And that's what they're going to live with. So if you want to keep the town the way it is, great. But if you want to change it and make it into a Montvale or some of these other towns, then that's what's going to happen. And Woodcliff Lake has been we all know, we all moved here for a reason, but it's changing fast. And anyway, it's just sad to see. But I know that you're going to do what you're going to do. So, you can't fight City Hall or Town Hall in this case. Anyway, that's it.
Thank you,
Good luck.
Richard.
Yes, you can.
I just want to clarify this last point. So through year 23, 11, we get at year 11, it goes up by 10% of the number because we're getting 10% of the annual gross revenues. And then through year 23 of a 30-year pilot, it goes up another 10%. So what I'm suggesting is in the last 7 years of a 30-year pilot, there's another 10, 20, 30, a total of a 50% increase, but it's so back-weighted in the last 7 years. And my request is to try to level these percentages so that all of the 30% additional revenue that we're getting in the last 7 years is spread into the first 23. This is the point I want to try to make, to level the back end revenue where money in the future isn't worth money today. 23 years out, discounted money, who knows what's going to happen 24, 25, 26, 30 years out. So my request is that we look at leveling this more than a 50% cliff the last 7 years, getting the most of the money. That's my point.
Thanks.
Okay.
I just have one more question. Laura Jeffers. One more question. Can we talk about the clock and how the clock works here? Because like it says, when we're talking about the townhouses, from the first day of the month following the substantial completion of the townhome until the last day of the 5th year. So he's not going to build everything all at once and finish it all at once. So if he takes the first 10, does that mean that the clock starts for those 10, but maybe the next 10, the clock in year 1 through 5, lands there? And is that the same thing with the pods? Like he's going to finish one of the pods for the apartments first. He's not going to do them all together because he's going to want to start collecting his revenue. So is that considered year 1 for the apartments that we're going to be collecting this money? Or it's just going to be a portion? I mean, it just seems like it's going to be a lot to, try and figure out what we're getting and when we're getting it because of the, the phases that everything's going to be built in. So can you just, talk about that a little bit, please?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
All right, if there's no other questions, I'm going to turn it over to come on up.
Hi, Christina Radu with Cliff Lake. It's a Radu, R-A-D-U. It's a very straightforward question. Should we, the existing taxpayers, expect our taxes to grow by a certain percentage? We know that taxes grow up every day. Every year there's an assessment, the taxes go up. Should we expect our taxes to go up due to this project? Are we, the existing taxpayers in Woodcliff Lake today, should we expect to pay higher taxes in the following years due to this project? Thank you.
Thank you. Come on up.
John Gruss, Woodcliff Lake. How are you? So I share a lot of the things that the people here do in terms of, okay, we have roughly 6,100 residents here in Woodcliff Lake. When these homes are built, I'm expecting there to be another 3,000 additional people here. Because, I mean, you're not going to have one person renting here. Has there, through this pilot program, has everybody accounted for, you know, what's the road work going to be like? How much are we putting into the DPW? Did we account for police officers, EMTs, firefighters? Do we account for their increases, pensions? Is that part of this, right? Did we account for the amount of children that are going to be part of those 3,000, you know, approximate people that are going to be living here? And do we have enough money in the pilot program to cover that? Or are our taxes going to cover that? So I know what's in for the developers, right? I know what's in for the town. I think the people here want to know what's in it for me. I think that's what's, and I believe they want to know that they're covered in taxes too, that they're not going to bleed. That's real important to us. Okay.
Hi,
Hi.
Annalise Benham, Woodcliff Lake, and I actually moved 2 years ago to Woodcliff Lake for the schools. So I am very concerned
Could
about
you
the
state your name
schools.
again? Because we,
Annalise Benham, Woodcliff Lake. My question is, why is a 30-year pilot program necessary? Why can't it just be 10 years? Let them get off the ground and try to get revenue to the town faster. Was an independent study done? And I'm sorry, I was putting my 2 young kids to bed before getting here at 8 o'clock at night to join this meeting. So this is important. And is it just one developer that we're dealing with? Or were there multiple? Are we kind of just stuck with this one deal? And that's why we're even entertaining this pilot program. But all of this, you know, again, the fact that we're going to be missing this amount of money to the schools, and we're going to be getting an increase of potentially children and family. This is why I moved to Woodcliff Lake. Other people are going to want the same. What is that going to mean? And everything goes up. So if we're going to have a higher head count in the school system, teachers need increases over time, right? How do we keep the school competitive in the way, you know, as it should be? So we would appreciate answers to that, and thank you.
thank you. Come on up.
Just want to add one more thing, John Gruss, Woodcliff Lake. I was just wondering if anyone has conducted any studies on other low development projects to see how many children actually do attend those projects, so we get a better idea of how much we have in this pilot program to cover those children. So that's the only addition I have.
Thank you. Okay, so come on. Laura, just tell us all your questions.
They need the microphone, otherwise people at home can't hear.
What's that?
No, come up, come up.
Because people at home are listening.
Oh,
And then
okay,
they
okay.
can't hear you.
They can probably hear me. The last thing that I wanted to say is, you know, just FYI, I know more about, you know, this affordable housing than I really want to admit to. But this developer has had pilot programs pulled from him in other municipalities, in Paramus, in Hackensack. And those are the 2 that I can think of offhand. And he's the one who's doing all the work at the Bergen Mall or the Bergen Town Center, that big monster that's at Paramus Park. And then, you know, another complex in Hackensack that I don't know if it's started yet or not, but I think it's the Sears building. But he hasn't walked away from anything, even though he's not getting these special provisions on those projects. He's still, you know, usually the pilot program, and correct me if I'm wrong, you know, is given to a developer because they have a problem getting their funding. You know, or as somebody else mentioned, the area that they're redeveloping, you know, it makes sense in Camden. But, it's not happening in Summit. It's not happening in these other towns that, equate to what Woodcliff Lake is. And the projects are, they're still going forward because of the fact that this is such a desirable community. So I just think that we really should see how all these numbers really break down. It's great to have these totals, but what does that really mean? What does that mean for me 5 years from now? What does that mean for me 10 years from now? Versus 30 years from now where, I'm going to be looking up at everybody. But anyway, I'm done. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, motion to close to the public? All in favor? No, second, is there? All in favor? All right, Councilwoman needs a bathroom break, so we're going to take a pause before we go to to answer the questions. We're going to take a break, and then we're going to go to the experts to answer the questions. Yeah. Is everyone here? All right. So I'm going to address all, the questions one by one. Before I turn it over to the experts, I just want to address Mr. Taylor and Mr. King. Now, Mr. Taylor made a comment. He said, this is the tip of the iceberg with these developers, and I agree with him. That is true, right? What I don't agree is that if we make a decision today, we'll set a precedent. Because that precedent was set by the state of New Jersey and the Fair Share Housing Act and the regulations coming out of Trenton. They're handcuffing municipalities into these developments. Just look around you as to what happened. We're not unique in Woodcliff Lake. Hold on one second. No. This is not a question.
This is not a.
I'm answering. No, I'm not. I'm talking about what's going on with Fair Share Housing. It's happening with us, with Montvale. Now, you could take the tact of Montvale and challenge these things, and take the tact of Englewood Cliffs and challenge these developments. Englewood Cliffs got stuck with 1,500 units. Montvale's, their immunity was taken away from them, right? There's legislation right now in Trenton that dictates any houses of worship needs overlays of 40 units an acre, right? That's during the lame duck session of Trenton. So the rights of municipalities are being taken away by Trenton and the state of New Jersey. That's what we're faced with. And as Mr. King said, how much of this is being driven by Fair Share Housing and the affordable housing? 100%. 100%. And that's the reality. And as Councilman Stern said, the pilot program is a way of controlling these type of developments. We had developers coming in for that lot for 600 to 700 units for that parcel, right? We fought. We said we don't want those type of developers here. And that's where we came up with Mr. Russo, who is a local developer who lives on Saddle River, who has an interest in making sure that this is the premier project for his company and for the town. And we controlled this development through this process. It took 8 months of negotiations going back and forth. So this wasn't, a haphazard decision to do this, but we have to protect the municipality. And there's litigation going on, right? So, for example, Party City objected to the Fair Share Housing Plan that we have. That's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with the state of New Jersey and the developers and the hammer of the developers. So we try to do the best we can for Woodcliff Lake to control the size of these developments. Montvale's struggling with it. Park Ridge is struggling with it. Drive down Wirmis Road. Go into Washington Township. 44 units on that small acre. I mean, come on. See it. It's not just Woodcliff Lake. So, Wendy, I'm going to turn this over to you to answer some of the specific questions.
Okay. Instead of going just in order, I want to address the biggest elephant in the room first, which is the schools. I think what people are not understanding is that while these numbers show a different in projection of the tax revenues that are being collected of as far as the pilot versus traditional taxes, the schools are not losing money. The schools write their budget, whatever their budget is, the borough collects taxes and has to pay that budget. They're not getting reduced by any amount. That's the first thing that has to be understood. Although these taxes are getting collected in a different manner by payment in lieu of taxes, the schools still get fully funded based on what their adopted budget is. That does not change. So I think that addresses a lot of the questions that people are asking about the schools, the special needs. Yes, this will generate school children. Yes, there have been studies done. It was presented at the time we were here for consideration of the redevelopment plan, which was the zoning that was adopted for this site. And that's where somebody had indicated that it's been shown that the affordable units tend to produce more school children than a market rate unit. And as part of the negotiations for this project, which if adopted tonight will include a pilot, was also to reduce the number of the larger apartments so that it would decrease the number of school children in the market rate units. So that's something that I think needs to be made clear to everybody here that may be concerned about something that messaging has gotten lost. The schools will be fully funded based on their adopted budget. That being said, this council has indicated publicly that they are committed to working with the schools and have started those conversations to make sure that some of this money goes to the school. How does that happen? That's not going to be the operating budget because this pilot is a set time frame, right? So you don't want to put something to an operating budget that may not be there after a certain time and then it's relied upon, because then you will create a hole in their budget. But the ways that towns can help the schools or work with their schools is if the school has a capital project that's not operational, schools need a new roof. Maybe there's new fields that need to be done, ball fields built, et cetera. That's a perfect opportunity to negotiate with your borough council in order to alleviate the impact of the need so that the school doesn't have to go to a referendum because now we have another money source. So that's really how the interplay happens from pilot payments when a municipality is willing to negotiate and help fix certain issues for the school. But certainly it shouldn't be the operating budget. That budget is fully funded by what is adopted by the school board, which is a separate entity from the council. Going on to the other questions. So that was the allocating of money. School taxes are not going down in reality. It's just that as based on what the current assessment is, there's not an additional allocation into the tax dollar. So the percentage of your tax dollar that is going to the school will increase because they're still getting fully funded, but the municipal portion is also decreasing from there. That's getting probably more into something that the auditors want to discuss, but yeah, if you don't mind, let's just address the schools first and then we'll go to the next.
Sure. And just another way of saying with what Wendy has said already is that, under the pilot program, and we'll call it $143 million project, right? That's going to be the value of this project. Under the pilot program, for the most part, and of course, there's going to be some small piece because we have a piece split between apartments and the townhomes. But generally speaking, that $143 million will not go into the borough-wide assessed value when it comes into determining how much the school is going to be able to share on that component. But the school will develop a budget. They'll have a tax dollar amount, just like they do every single year. That taxable amount or that dollar amount that they need to raise will then get divided by the assessed value of the borough. We'll have a tax rate. They'll get the full amount of that dollar value. School is not going to see a single drop in their tax dollars that they need to operate their budget. The distinction is that on a $140 million project, that assessed value, that money is going to be primarily given to the municipality. It's not going to be added for the borough-wide assessed value that everyone would have normally shared in on the project if it was not a pilot. So that's the difference. It just means that the money is being diverted to the municipality. The school is going to be based on a different assessed value, and that number is going to be raised and given to the school on an annual basis. So there's not going to be any kind of loss of revenue on a school basis on the tax side.
And one other important thing to note based on the projections here, our auditor's projections, because the number we have today is a certain assessed value for that property, that assessed value is likely not to continue if something isn't built on this property, because the condition of the building is such that it may not have that same value. There's been plenty of property tax appeals. That's what's generally the result of when there may be a property that is assessed higher than what it should be. So I just want to note that even though the projections for comparison purposes had that same, 69 million as the assessed value of the property, that would be unlikely to be the assessed value moving forward if that property stayed as is. So it's there for projection purposes. And I just wanted to make sure that everybody was aware that that was only for projection purposes. It doesn't mean that is what would happen absent something coming onto this property. I know that the mayor has addressed this, but there was comments made about the slippery slope of we never had townhouses, now we have townhouses. Why do we have apartments? We shouldn't have anything but a single family home. That is illegal now in the state of New Jersey. That is what Mount Laurel is based on. So as much as people might want to just have single-family home, the important part of what the borough is doing, and candidly, I also do the affordable housing for the borough, so I know how this council has struggled to make sure that they are meeting their constitutional obligation while still trying to protect the single-family neighborhoods. Because what happens next is if you don't allow development on properties that are turning over is, and I have this happening in other towns, a builder buys a 2-acre single-family home, and now you're getting 10 townhouses on it in the middle of single families. I have another town that's getting 12 units on a 0.73 acre of a home because they have unmet need. So, this is very important that everything be looked at in a holistic picture and not just as a one-off. I understand that today we're here to talk about this particular project, but we were all here back in June with the housing plan, and it is an overall picture that needs to be looked at of, we have people knocking down your door, where should it be approved because it's coming somewhere? That, moving on to the next point, I know there was a lot of talk about the engineering of the site, and I agree that it's wonderful that these things are being addressed, but this public hearing is specific to the ordinance on the financial agreement, so that is actually a little bit outside of the scope of what we're going to be discussing tonight. As far as, let's see, the audits, that was a big question that was brought up by a lot of people of how are we going to be able to tell whether the information being provided is correct? How are we determining what the yield is to the municipality in the pilot? There is, in fact, a requirement under the statute for there to be annual audits. The developer will provide their information first. However, the borough will have their professionals review and confirm or request additional information to deny whatever was provided by the developer. I want to make clear to all of the residents, this is not being done on your tax dollar. The financial agreement has an escrow where the developer will be reimbursing any administrative costs of the borough, not only the audit, but any administrative costs over the next term of the pilot. There was a question about the term of the pilot, so I think that's probably a good crossover. The way that it works, and this also addresses something that both Mr. Taylor had spoken about and Council President spoken about. There is a community benefit payment that the developer is agreeing to make to the borough for up to 5 years. And the reason for that is it may take up to 5 years for the project to be built. And in between that time, you would otherwise only be getting the value of the land tax because the pilot payments come after the CO or the TCO. So that's the substantial completion. That's when the project's built and ready to be occupied. So in order to make sure that the borough is not harmed during the construction phase, we've negotiated a community benefit payment to make sure that the borough is still receiving funding so that the taxpayers are not impacted and your taxes don't go up during that period while you're waiting for construction to happen. To Mr. Taylor's point about having requested the redevelopment agreement and none of this was in there, you may note that on the agenda tonight, there is a resolution to approve an amended version of the redevelopment agreement. And the reason why that redevelopment agreement wasn't executed and why tonight there'll be a new one is because there were substantial changes made to it because the borough's professionals, at the direction of the council and the committee, kept going. And so now that is in there when it wasn't in there the last time that it was approved. That's why you didn't see it in the copy you saw. That was a draft copy that hadn't been executed. There is a new agreement that is getting approved tonight that includes those payments for up to 5 years to make sure that there's no burden on the taxpayer. Let's see. So someone did ask about the revenue of the existing site, so I suppose I already touched upon that by noting that that's projected from today's revenues, but quite frankly, this property is not a $69 million value at the moment. If we base it on what it's transferring hands on, that would provide for a big tax appeal. Let's see. So that's why the redevelopment agreement in draft form did not have all of the terms, because we're proving or asking the council to approve a new one. The way that the townhouses are getting built in CO'd, because the townhouses are different than an apartment building. The apartment building would have to be substantially complete before anyone come in. Townhouses can be built one by one. So each one of those townhouses will have a start date from when they sell, and there's a CO. But under no circumstances, anything going to go beyond the period of the financial agreement. So if the developer waits 15 years to build a townhouse, they're not going to get another 20 years on top of that. That's not how it's going to work. Everything ends within 35 years. It's 30 years on the apartments for the actual pilot agreement, and they have up to 5 years to complete the construction. With the townhouse, that would be the 25 years. It's the 5 years plus to start and complete construction. You have 20 years of the pilot. Some of how the townhouses will be paying their taxes is going to be based on a percentage of what the actual assessed value is. That the benefit to the borough about the taxes being paid in that way, again, is that the municipality is able to get a larger payment because it's 95% of the revenues going to the borough versus having to spread to all of the other parties that would be into that calculation, and the county is getting less with only the 5%. I think I'm going to turn it over to our auditors to get into the specific questions about the different projections of the payments and how it spreads across the time period. And just note that it is not 100. It's not calculated at 100% occupancy. There's always a certain percentage in the industry that has turnover for the rental apartments. You know, the townhouses are going to be sold, so they'll be 100% sold at some point, and each one goes by itself. But when you're doing the calculations and the projections for apartments, there is a certain rate of turnover that is anticipated, and then there's also a certain rate of rental increases that are anticipated. So although it looks like it's substantially back heavy on the pilot, you also have to keep in mind that the revenues are growing, not just the percentage to the borough, but the revenues because of rent payments going up. But I'm going to ask you all to take it a little bit more.
Sure. Thank you, Wendy. And I'm going to turn a lot of this over to Julius in the detail, but just a couple of basic comments. Yeah, and that's the reason why it is backloaded. So those percentages are smaller up front. I mean, there's more risk for the developer at that point as well. And so that's why those are typically backloaded. You know, as part of this whole process started with a blank slate, right? And really what happens is the developer comes in then and says, this is what my demands would be. And then that's when we went back and forth over again, eight and a half months, and constantly revising that to the betterment of the deal, to get more for Woodcliff Lake, as opposed to what the developer really wanted. And there were a lot of concessions that happened during that process. Lydecker obviously being held harmless on the current tax value as the building gets demolished now, and as the process happens, it could be up to 5 years before it's fully built out. So we're not going to lose revenue on that side. There's the donation. You know, one of the things and one of the biggest issues, again, you know, from the developer side, they're looking for at least what are we escalating on rent increases on an annual basis. So the rent increase on the annual basis was projected at 2.5%. But if that rent goes up, so that's a minimum, it's the number we're going to get. But if that number goes up, it can be more money again to us on the municipal side. So I don't know if there's other specific, but I know there was a question regarding escalation in dollar values per year.
Yeah, I think Paul touched on a lot of the issues already. The rent, I think somebody asked a question earlier about what is annual gross revenues. Annual gross revenues really is translated, that's rents essentially. What are the rents that somebody renting an apartment is going to pay? And then basically, we talked also about, well, how does that grow? So the rents we assumed, and a lot of this is based on projections. So yes, there's certain assumptions that went into all those numbers that we presented earlier. but the assumption was 2.5% increase on rents, a 5% vacancy once the project is fully built out and occupied, that there is always going to be a 5% vacancy. That was factored in the first 2 years. And you may have noticed it in the well, actually, you didn't see it in the numbers. Somebody requested that we bring the breakdown by year. So once we get that blessed by the council, that could be made available. But when you do see those numbers, what you'll see is the first 2 years, actually, those numbers are lower because that was when the project was being built and the rentals were being phased in over time. Then by year 3, when the project is fully built out, that's when the 5% vacancy really kicks in for the apartment phase. With the townhome phase, we basically did assume that that was going to be for sale units and they were all going to come online right up front in year 1. Again, that's an assumption. May not happen that way. That would impact these numbers. But those were some of the assumptions that we worked on off of. And then the other thing too is like getting back to the percentages on the pilot. When you look at the percentages on the pilot, somebody said, well, why weren't the percentages more evenly spread out over the course of the 30 years? Basically, when you do the financial analysis, and we do this work for a lot of municipalities, the project doesn't support a higher percentage in the early years. Otherwise, it wouldn't be feasible for the developer to build the project. We look at all those things when we're determining what can the developer afford to pay in a pilot for this project to be built. 10% is the minimum under the law. So they're paying that minimum percentage for the first 11 years or first 10 years. Then beginning in year 11, once we saw that the project could support a higher percentage, we went back to the developer, and this was the negotiation, and we requested higher percentages. And those are the ultimate percentages that you saw that we had in the presentation. So to say that, to ask to spread it out, we really looked at that already, quite honestly, and we tried to negotiate the best deal that we could for the town, and I think we really did a pretty good job. I mean, if you look at other pilots that other towns do, most of them don't get up to 15% in year 30. So we really were very aggressive when we went to the developer and asked for these additional pilot percentages. On the townhome phase, we also took a hard look. They originally had asked for a 30-year pilot on the townhomes. We looked at the financials and we said, well, this project doesn't really warrant a 30-year pilot on the townhomes. That's why when you look at the presentation, we only did a pilot for 20 years on the townhomes. And then after 20 years, it reverts back to full taxation because that portion of the project didn't warrant a 30-year pilot. So again, all these things were looked at as part of the negotiation process. And I'm not sure if there are other questions I didn't address, so I'll definitely welcome Wendy here to give me a keeper. She's the gatekeeper.
I'm gonna talk a little bit just about the site itself. There was a couple questions regarding the site topography and concerns about the project. The developer did have a site plan application at the Land Use Board, and that site plan application included very detailed plans regarding topography, regarding how the buildings were laid out in terms of not only the locations, but also topo. They've indicated that they're required by law to meet all stormwater management requirements through NJDEP. There was a comment about making a left turn from Glen Road exit. It's a right in, right out on Glen Road, so that is of no concern. There were retaining walls that are being provided, elevations, renderings. There were cut sections across Chestnut Ridge to the building showing the existing slopes that were going to be maintained, as well as maintaining existing trees along that. I believe that all of those documents would be at Borough Hall. There was also a question regarding the impacts on DPW, police, fire, etc. So obviously the site had development on it prior, which police and fire were required to to maintain. As a part of that, the property, the land hasn't increased in size. The roads on the interior of the property are going to be private. They're going to be maintained privately. Garbage pickup will be private, so there'll be no impacts on DPW. Fire and police should be the same as it was prior to this project. So we believe that all of those kind of issues have been addressed as a part of the site plan application.
I think the last big question to address now is what's going to happen to the existing resident taxes. So while I will say this with the caveat of, things always go up, right? The school tax is always going to go up. The county taxes is always going to go up. What I will say is that your taxes are not going up as a result of this project. As a result of the pilot, it may help keep you the municipal portion of your tax at a lower level for a longer period of time than perhaps otherwise, because the borough will be collecting more money based through this arrangement. So to the extent that perhaps you might need another police officer, the pilot will cover the cost of that. I can't speak for what the future is going to bring with healthcare costs and whatnot, but this project is not in itself going to be generating any tax burden onto the existing residents. It will more than cover its own cost.
I'll just add to that. I'll just add to that, and Wendy definitely answered that appropriately. But just think about it, right? So this project alone, this $143 million new project, right? What is it going to do? It's going to provide $106 million worth of additional proceeds, right? 86 million of that's going to come to the municipality. And if you compare it, if we just, again, went under the assumption that what's existing there stays forever and it's at the right value, we're still going to generate $42 million more as a community. So, I think at the end of the day, I think this is a plus for the borough of Woodcliff Lake. And the fact that we're generating all this additional money and we're really not adding substantial charges or costs to the borough.
Right. I mean, basically, and Paul said it spot on. I mean, yes, the tax burden may shift between the municipal share, the local school, the regional school, and the county, but overall tax burden to the residents is going to go down based on these projections because we're generating an additional $42 million that wouldn't otherwise have been generated if this project didn't go into place. So that's a benefit to the residents. And as I said, the burden may shift, but in total, it's going to be a benefit.
Mayor, I believe that covers all of the summaries of the questions put together.
One of the big benefits of this agreement that I don't think people realize that it's an important point is that with this agreement, the BMW tax appeals go away. So when we're looking at these tax appeals, we're looking at exposure of maybe 13 million. Well, our budget is 14 million. If we lose these tax appeals, where do you think that money is going to come from? From us. So this was a big part of that negotiation and eliminating the tax appeals. And as Paul said, these properties were pretty much overassessed. And we would have lost that in tax court. So that's a huge benefit for this municipality that we have to realize. And that's what we looked at too. The community benefit portion also protects us. When the building is not there, we're receiving revenue for that loss of that assessment. That's also huge, right? They didn't have to do that. We negotiated that in to the agreement to make sure we're level throughout the whole project and we're receiving revenue to cover the losses of that assessed value. That's a big portion of this agreement. And also the $2 million that they will provide to the municipalities for the beautification of the Wormis Road corridor, Lydecker, and the surrounding grounds. We also negotiated that into the agreement. They started at $500,000. We pushed it to $2 million, right? That's all part of the negotiations that we were involved with. Mr. Stern, Ms. Marsh, we looked after the benefits of our borough, understanding the risk that's involved. We're not moving forward with these projects. The fact that this project is isolated, and as Wendy indicated, look what's happening in Washington Township. You have a single family residential zone, and you have 44 townhomes going into one lot. Just drive down Wormis Road and look on it on the left. We were cognizant of these issues. So the idea is try to limit the damage as much as possible. and understanding the communities around us that are developing. Montvale, KPMG is 30 acres coming up, okay? So think about that. Look what's happening in Park Ridge with the Sony property, right? So it's here. Unfortunately, the area is going to change. We have to adapt to it and try to control it as much as we can for the benefit of our residents. And that's what we were all cognizant about, to protect our interest. So I don't know if Mr. Stern, anyone else from the council would like to say anything? Ms. Marsh?
Can I just say something very quickly? Is that okay? Just one thing. I just want to say that I think it's important to note that none of us wanted BMW, the Hilton, or Party City to go out of business and leave our borough. I think that's the most important thing to begin with. We did not choose to build developments. We wanted our businesses to stay. But when our businesses left, we lost a lot of revenue, and the property was sold, and the buyers who wanted it were developers. So I think that's just a very important thing to note.
Ms. Marsh?
Sorry, I also, I wanted to make a point, I want to thank Paul and Julius and Wendy and Fran. These are our experts and they're here. And I know, as Mr. Taylor pointed out, it seems like this is all just sprung on you, but this is 2 years of all of our lives that we've been working and negotiating and back and forth. And really, this is not an overnight something. I've personally talked about it at every council meeting since, for about 2.5 years, that these things were coming and happening, and trying to get, people to understand that these are things that we've been working with and dealing with. And, our experts have spent a great amount of time preparing and going over numbers and going over contracts and back and forth. And this is not anything that any of us on the council have taken lightly. It's not anything we haven't taken seriously or paid attention to. And it's not something that hasn't been, really worked hard on by all the people who are here. And so I understand that everybody has questions and concerns, and that is all valid and fair. I just want you to know that this is something that we've had these questions. Every question that you guys have presented, something that you've brought up are things that we have been addressing and dealing with and back and forth for 2 years. We are residents of this town. We are not just representatives. And these are not things that we haven't asked of ourselves and asked of the developers and asked of our experts. This has been a really lengthy negotiation process, and it has not been easy for the developers to have this project with us either. We have really advocated as best we can for the residents of this town. And whether ultimately everyone wanted development or didn't want development, I can tell you over the past 2 years, we have made sure that we don't have a 700 unit development on this particular piece of land. And I know that might not seem comforting, but it was a lot of work for us to get here. So I just want to thank everyone who's up here, thank everyone who's at that table. I appreciate that everyone came out tonight too, because it's important that you guys are here and ask questions and hear the presentation. So just thank you.
And when we look at things in terms of the right-hand turn, a couple of years ago, many residents, open up the right-hand turn on 171 open. There's a reason why we don't do these things. We looked at these things prospectively and what's coming up. And we understand that these developments were coming up in the future. So we plan these things, not from today. We plan 10, 15 years down the line of how it's going to be and how it's going to look with the help of our experts. And we try to do the best we can to try to control the amount of development that comes to the area. Again, it was a real challenge telling the realtor for BMW, we don't want 700 units on BMW. We don't want 600 units of BMW. And that was the push. And they got offers for that much. And we said no, and we held the ground. So this is the best that we could do in terms of limiting the size and scope of these developments. Because think about what the alternative would be, and it's not good.
Well, thank you, Mayor. And I want to especially thank Councilwoman Marsh and Council President Stern, along with the mayor and our professionals, for all their diligence. What the public doesn't often see is while we meet perhaps 12 times a year, monthly, for these council meetings, is the countless hours throughout the day, throughout the workday, our evenings, time away from families and others that go into working with our professionals, working with realtors, folks, part of the Russo Development Program, our professionals, to see this through, that this was, as Councilwoman Marsh and others pointed out, years of work to make sure that we are protecting the interests of the municipality. 4 of the 6 of us on this dais, from the council perspective, have children in the schools. This is something we are all taxpayers. Every single person who lives in Woodcliff Lake on this dais is paying taxes. We are all cognizant of the impact this has. What you see in front of you, and you know, I've seen some of the commentary and things like that on social media. I've had friends and many of you as constituents ask us sort of, all right, we understand we are where we are from a constitutional perspective with BMW, but why the pilot? And I think what you've heard tonight is the pilot for us, for the municipality, is a tool for us to get more favorable terms, that we can build something that we as a municipality could support from resources that we have available, that we can use it as an opportunity to get the best possible outcome based on our constitutional obligations with Mount Laurel and others for the municipality. That is other revenue sources, that is opportunity to defray costs that we would otherwise have to spend. I asked every single one of you, unless you live on Brookview and the other 2 streets that we paved this year, what is the condition of your streets? I'm sure every single one of you would raise your hand and say, please pave my street. We need to pave all 46 miles of roadway in this municipality. We have ball fields that are consistently flooded. We've got Borough Hall that needs considerable amounts of work. The lists are endless for this municipality. And it's not to say that the only way to do that is via this pilot. The question is that we have this constitutional obligation in front of us, from building affordable housing, meeting these obligations, that if we don't do, we're going to be in court, we're going to be sued, we're going to lose, and we're going to get a much worse outcome than if we had this pilot agreement. So this is one of the very few tools in our toolbox to help this municipality and make sure that we're getting the best possible terms that we can, given the situation in front of us. The other question that was raised is around public safety, around the needs for extra police support and emergency services. I can speak, Council President Stern and myself have been working for the last year on renegotiating the PBA contract with our police department. That is going to be a 5-year contract. You'll see on the agenda for this evening a memorandum of understanding with the PBA outlining the terms of that new contract. As part of that contract, one of the things that we are doing is changing their schedule with the agreement of the police department, or the members of the police department, from an 8-hour shift to what is called a Pittman 12-hour shift. By doing that, that enables us to put more cops on the street per shift while maintaining the current expenditure for salaries and other benefits for the police department. So we are looking at ways, how do we stretch every single tax dollar that we possibly are getting in and getting more out of it? We're getting more cops on the street to proactively support us for things like this BMW development, in the future for things like the Hilton, so that we don't automatically have to turn and say, we need to hire more cops. We need more volunteer firefighters, which we do need more volunteer firefighters. So anyone who wants to raise their hand, we would very much appreciate it. But from a police perspective, working from a EMS standpoint with Tri-Borough as well as local EMS services, how do we get and make sure that we are continuing to protect our residents? So getting back to sort of the original point of the amount of hours that are poured in from this council of thinking through all of these things. Do we have enough water, electricity? Can our sewers support it? These are all things that are being proactively thought of. You are going to see some changes as of the beginning of the year, as mentioned in our last, or as approved in our last council meeting, to our sanitation schedule. Things such as outsourcing garbage so that we can lower the load on our current DPW and enable them to focus on other things in the municipality, including keeping our sewers clean, maintaining our parks, roadways, and otherwise.
Thank you, Councilman. Anyone else? Okay. So motion on ordinance number 25-12, motion to adopt. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Mr. Pollack, Mr. Bonanno, roll call, please.
Mr. Bonanno? Yes. Brodsky?
Yes.
Ms. Margolis?
Yes.
Ms. Marsh?
Yes.
Mr. Pollack?
Yes.
Mr. Stern?
Yes. Okay. Resolution number 25-285, resolution approving modified redevelopment agreement with RW Wycliffe Lake Urban Renewal. Is there a motion for adoption? Is there a second? Roll call, please.
Mr. Bonanno? Yes. Ms. Brodsky? Yes. Ms. Margolis? Ms. Marsh? Mr. Pollak? Mr. Stern?
Yes. Yeah. All right, we're going to take a 5-minute break. Thank you. If anyone has any further questions, you can ask the experts or anyone.
I like to put it out there.
Wendy, you're done. You want to go? Oh, no, yeah, Wendy, you're not done.
Bonanno needs a break.
No, I'll see you tomorrow. Yeah. Early. Not in the training. I kind of
All right. All right, so
I'll see you at 8:30.
motion to open to the public? Is there a second? Second. All in favor?
Yes.
Anyone from the public like to speak? Seeing none? Motion to close to the public?
Motion.
Is there a second? All in favor? Motion passes. Mayor's report, I have nothing to report. Council members' reports. Councilman Bonanno.
Last night was the Christmas tree lighting in the park, and the first Christmas tree lighting in the park. It was a great success. It's great to see so many families there.
At the end of this.
And the tree lighting, special thanks to Ron and Parks and Rec Director, DPW, and Castle Farm Chase. The menorah lighting will be on this Sunday, December 14th at 4:30 p.m. To another small community showing us for our holiday celebrations. Ice skating event, York County Wonderland, as a result of winning second place in last year's tree decorating contest, as well as the award of winning public skating session at Dance Park, Monday, December 22nd, from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. More information is being shared on the town website and social media. Last thing, tree decoration decorating contest, no big not win this year. The tree decoration contest, and we thank our local schools for their creativity and enthusiasm. A lot of spirit in the community. For the seniors, I had a wonderful party, holiday party for Quarry Girls this week. Last week, it was fun for everybody. And the seniors will be welcoming in 2026 at the Senior Center on New Year's Eve. All interested should reach out. DPW. I think I had to say that too. And we did have a special guest who said that. I'm trying to condense it. DPW sanitation recycling 2026 sanitation recycling schedule has been finalized and shared via newsletter. Public notice and calendars are going out this week. Bulky waste collection will resume in January. The bathrooms and sprinkler systems at parks and ball fields have been winterized. All park and field bathrooms are closed until spring. Final leaf collection pass is underway. Over 25% of the town has been completed so far.
East side has all been completed.
East side is done.
East side is done.
Yep.
So if you're on the east side, do not put your leaves out. You'll need to make arrangements with your landscaper or else.
Yep. And the Weirmus Lane pump station construction is well into progress. Also, finally, just want to thank the DPW for doing a great job decorating the park and getting ready for the holiday events. And sorry to Santa that I didn't mention before, but that's it. That's what I got.
Good. Councilwoman Brodsky.
Thank you. We do have some exciting news in an effort to continue to seek out new avenues for communication to our community. We are looking to launch a new Woodcliff Lake community app targeting February as our launch date. Residents will be able to download the app to their phone, plus have the ability to opt in for push notifications, which will be really important. Initially, the app will include information on all things Park and Rec, including camp information, all events, plus DPW garbage and recycling schedules, and mayor and council and land use meeting dates. It's the hope that we can feed as much information to the app in the future. We will keep the current rave system as it is. This way, it'll help differentiate emergency and non-emergency information. And then Jennifer Erity, a Woodcliff Lake resident, has been selected as the 2025 Hometown Hero. Jen couldn't make it tonight, but I do want to mention a couple of things about her. She's the co-founder and president of Spoil Me Pink, a nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting local individuals diagnosed with breast cancer. She creates uplifting and pampering events, providing moments of joy, rest, and self-care during some of the most challenging times in their lives. Spoil Me Pink has been recognized nationally on Live with Kelly and Ryan and ABC News. Anyone who received the October issue of 201 magazine, she was on the cover, which was very exciting. Jen also serves on the board of the nonprofit organization Josephine's Garden, which is dedicated to creating healing spaces and experiences for pediatric cancer patients and their families. She co-founded the Brian Long Memorial Foundation in honor of a local police officer in Park Ridge who tragically lost his battle with cancer. Most recently, she co-founded the Rocco Rodin Memorial Scholarship Foundation in honor of a beloved local high school student who attended St. Joe's. Professionally, she serves as the district community internship facilitator for the Pascack Valley Regional High School District, where she bridges education with real-world experience through the senior internship program. This past October, Jen was the recipient of the Greater Pascack Valley Citizens Award given by the Pascack Valley Chamber of Commerce. Like I said, she was unable to attend tonight. She's actually at a fundraiser of one of the organizations that I just mentioned. Jen, if you're listening, the Borough of Woodcliff Lake is proud, and we're lucky to have you for all that you do for our community.
Thank you. Councilwoman Margolis?
Sure, I'll make this quick. I just also want to highlight that tomorrow night is the TICE event at TICE Center, not at the Senior Center, at the Marketplace at the mall. It is their Winter Wonderland from 5 to 8. So we would like to help support our business partners. And also Santa, from what I understand, will also be able to stop by in case you missed it last night. The food drive is still going. We have been able to fill many, many bins, both at 50 TICE, who has been a great partner, and at Borough Hall, that they've had to pick it up very often, which is an amazing problem to have. We should keep on the drive. They still need many things. I was in the food pantry the other day. It is stocked, but the amount of bags that were set up for people to come in and get was astounding. So the more you have, they will take reusable bags. They're actually looking for them, and any food or anything that you can donate. We are up to 33 families in town who get SNAP benefits. Councilman Bonanno and I met about the Chamber of Commerce, and we're tackling it the best we can with the information that we have. If anyone has any other businesses that they know of, please reach out to us and we will get going. And in terms of Revolution 250, we're waiting for some of the notes from the county, and then we'll be having another meeting hopefully in January.
Thank you. Councilwoman Marsh?
Okay, well, not to harp on 300 Chestnut Ridge Road, but at our December 2nd planning board meeting, we did approve the site plan for the project, and all of the documents relating to a lot of the questions brought up, the engineers, the soil, God, there's a lot of soil documents. All of them are up on the land use board site. So if you go on the borough website, if you go under boards, if you go to land use boards, you can look up the project and we will have all the documents there. If for some reason you can't find anything, please reach out to me. We had a cross-examination of witnesses. We did have a lot of residents come out, and that was approved last week. It was a special meeting. Our next land use board meeting will be next Tuesday, December 16th. It will be our regularly planned meeting, and I believe we will be continuing with the Woodcliff Manor. That's it.
Thank you. Councilman Pollock?
Just a couple quick updates from my side. As I mentioned earlier, today on the agenda this evening is the police MOU. So I want to thank the PBA 206 Collective Bargaining Unit for their work and partnership over the last year, working with Council President Stern, Administrator Padilla, and myself, seeing this through. I believe that this is a fair contract for both the municipality as well as the PBA, and sets us up for success over the next 5 years and beyond. As I mentioned earlier, this does shift our police department schedule from an 8-hour shift to a 12-hour shift. This ensures better coverage for things such as a school post, puts more officers on the streets per shift, and generally just continues to make sure that our police department can properly grow with the changing needs of the municipality, and ensure that they can continue to do the things that they need to do. Several promotions are on the agenda this evening as well. 3 sergeants and 2 to the rank of lieutenant. So want to, hopefully this goes through and want to congratulate them on these well-deserved promotions. We will have a promotion ceremony to be announced likely for sometime next Wednesday here in Tice Center. So congratulations to them and to the well-deserved promotions. Do want to remind residents as we approach the holiday season, many decide to leave town on vacations or to be with family. You can go to the police department, register the days that you would be away, just like you would hold your mail, and the police department will do their best to keep an eye on your property. Lastly, as is also stated in the engineer's report, the train station and the associated closures should be wrapping up towards the end of this year. As stated, we're hoping to reopen the lot before the end of the year. Additional work will be needed in the spring, plantings, benches, and things like that, but that should not require any lasting changes. And then lastly, from a police department perspective, this Monday, December 15th at 8:30 a.m., the tickets go on sale for the train, 8 o'clock, down at Borough Hall or the police department, I think. Police department. That's why I shouldn't give updates. At the police department, train passes will be on sale. So first come, first serve.
Thank
That
you.
concludes my report.
Council President Stern.
I'm going to keep it very quick. It's been a long meeting. I know we've had 2 major initiatives. On one of them, I wanted to thank Nikki for the work on not only the pilot, but the affordable housing and on the Russo development. On the PBA contract, I did want to thank Ben. I think we've done a lot of good work tonight, and I think people should be proud on how we've protected the borough and the next 5 years that we're going to see. So,
Thank you. Engineers report is in your packet. Administrators report, Tom.
Mayor, I just wanted to add to police committee report that the MOU is hopefully being adopted tonight. As part of that, one of the agreements now is all new employees, and actually any the last 11 hires are going into a high deductible plan. This is going to save money for us on the health benefits. I want to commend our health benefits consultant, Mr. Covelli, was very helpful with that. And of course, Mr. Stern and Mr. Pollack, we all work together to make that happen. And as part of that, we will have, and it's already been approved by the BMAC, we will have a special enrollment beginning tomorrow through Monday, so that those officers who have to move over to this plan can do so. But at the same time, I have been informed that we may have some other officers and other employees who may want to take advantage of moving to a high deductible plan. So
nice.
And Tom, I guess going forward, all new employees of the borough are going to be on.
we will need to do a resolution that in the new year, Councilman. And also as part of that, what we'll be doing, I spoke to our labor council, is we will be amending, as you know, we just did our personnel manual. We'll need to officially amend the personnel manual, so it'll be part of that. But yes, any new employees, and that'll be so forth.
Is that it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, consent agenda. Any
Mayor,
questions?
I have a question. I have a question on Resolution 25-280, which is the major field improvement. Councilman Stern, you mentioned earlier that the plan is to turf after the next season. Where is the funding coming from? Do we receive any grants, or are we doing anything related to that?
As far as the funding, we haven't had discussions as to the capital budget, but it's going to come out of the capital budget.
Are we planning to pay for it entirely? Is baseball going to be chipping in?
We haven't had those discussions with baseball yet, but once we get a firm handle on what the pricing will be, we're going to have those discussions. I've had early discussions with baseball just to let them know that we would expect a sizable contribution for some component of it, whether it be fencing or backstops, but we haven't had those discussions until we get.
And then one further question, because we've talked about it in
Sure.
the past couple of years, this year and previous year, with the current rec committee. Have we worked out a recreation plan for fixes to the other fields as well, Lockwood and Rinsler?
So we've looked at the other 2 fields. The Winsler we've looked at is going to require both turf and a retaining wall, which, if I recall, was in excess of $1 million. I think the turf Lockwood, I think, was about 1.8 million. These are certainly discussions for for the future about what we can afford as far as debt levels and stuff like that. But, you know, we do need to come up with a plan as to how we're going to address both of those projects and which one would go second and which one would go third.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on the consent agenda? Being none, motion to accept the consent agenda?
Motion.
Is it all in favor?
Yes.
Okay. Motion to adjourn?
Motion to go to close.
No, let's do motion to adjourn first.
No.
Oh, okay, yeah. Motion to go into close.
Motion.
All in favor?
That's for litigation, right?
Yeah.